The 5 main players of punctuation with Dr. Steve Rutledge. The big idea of this video is how to use the 5 main players of punctuation. These include the period, the comma, the semicolon, the colon, and the dash. Let's start with the challenge. This is a paragraph very much like a paragraph written and turned in by one of my students. Here's what I want you to try. Pause the video in just a second. Take a deep breath, and then I want you to read the paragraph aloud. You can only stop and take another breath if you see one of the 5 main players of punctuation: period, comma, semicolon, colon, or dash. No punctuation, no pauses, no breaths. So again, pause the video, read it aloud. You can only take an extra breath or pause if you see one of the 5 punctuation marks. Okay, let's see how I can do at my own challenge. Take a deep breath. My family and I love each other. I mean, we're very close. So my mom died. We all took it hard. In the funeral, there's a lot of crying to carry on. I remember my uncle and my mother's brother slumped over a casket just bawling out crying, "Louisa, you was the saint. I say, Louisa." And he was right. My mom was the saint. Not only raised me and my brother, but she often took care of others until they could get back on their feet. When my friend Andre's parents divorced, he needed a place to stay so he wouldn't have to switch schools. And my mother let me stay for us senior year until the money was tighter. That speaking of money, she was working 2 jobs every day to be quiet. Whew. So what made reading this so difficult? Well, it's because we left out the pauses, right? So without visual punctuation marks, we just sort of have to stumble through the paragraph without a real good sense of where to start or where to stop. This brings me to a point that's so good, I'm going to have to type it out. And that is this. Above all else, punctuation is a pause. You might think of it this way. A pause is a cause for punctuation. And that rhymes. So it must be true. So let me just take a part of this example writing and show you what it looks like when I add in punctuation. It reads something more like this. My family and I love each other, semicolon. I mean, we're very close, comma, slight pause. So when my mom died, we all took it hard, period. End of thought, beginning of new thought. At the funeral, there was a lot of crying and carrying on, slight pause, comma. And I remember my uncle, dash, my mom's brother, dash, slumped over her casket just bawling, comma, crying out, comma, Louisa, you was a saint, Louisa. And he was right, dash, my mom was a saint, colon. She not only raised me and my brother, comma, slight pause, but she often took in others until they could get back on their feet. Period. End of thought. Hey, I like this narrative a lot more now because it has the punctuation and I can read it. Notice too that this bit of writing uses all the punctuation marks we're going to talk about today, the 5 main players. It's got semicolons, commas, dashes, a colon, and of course, a period. Okay, here's an exercise I often give my students. Here again are the 5 main players. A period, a dash, semicolon, a comma, and a colon. Can you put your finger on the group of words that best describes what a period does? Go ahead, put your finger on the screen. Which group of words best describes what a period does? That's right. A period usually separates 2 complete thoughts or sentences. Let's try the dash. Which group of words best describes what a dash does? Yes, a dash is used to add extra information to the middle or end of a sentence. Did you get it right? How about the semicolon? Yeah, like periods, semicolons are used to separate 2 sentences. But in the case of a semicolon, the sentences are closely related. Okay, how about commas? That's right. A comma creates a pause within a sentence, and it tells the reader, pause, but I'm not done with the thought yet. And of course, a colon usually separates sentences from lists or phrases. There is an interesting situation where colons can also separate sentences. In fact, I used one in the writing you saw earlier, but we're probably not going to talk much about that in this video. Okay, here's another challenge for you. This is an exercise I often give my students when I'm teaching the 5 main players. I got 5 sentences. Now, we know that a pause is a cause for punctuation, right? So what I've placed here are blanks that indicate pauses. Which punctuation pause would fit best there? Because a pause is a cause. All you got to decide now is which of the 5 main players best fits there. So what I'll do is I'll read the sentence, then I want you to hit pause on your video and try to figure out which of the 5 main players would best fit in that blank for that group of words. Okay, here we go. Let's try number 1. Some people say football can bring a whole community together. I agree. All right, hit pause on your computer. Try to figure out which of the 5 main players would best go in that blank. All right, I had to give you kind of an odd one to begin, didn't I? This one, actually, I think you could make a few arguments. Believe it or not, as short as it is, I agree is a complete sentence. It has a subject, I, it's got the verb, agree, and in this context, it makes a complete thought. I agree. We know exactly what you mean. You agree with the previous statement. So you have 2 sentences. Well, which of the 5 main players are used with sentences? That's right. A period or a semicolon. In this case, I think the semicolon is the best choice because both of these sentences seem to be closely related. So I probably would choose a semicolon over the period. I do need to add something just to make your life more complicated. You could make a small argument for a stylistic use of a comma. Now, normally commas don't separate sentences, okay? So don't use these normally. But once in a while, if the second sentence is really short and really functioning as just sort of an extra idea, you can get away with a comma in that situation. But like I said, normally, if you got 2 sentences, you're going to need a period or a semicolon. Let's move on to number 2. Football brought my entire community of 3,900 people out to pack the stands every Friday. Folks only stayed home if they were sick or dead. All right, there's a pause, so there's a cause. Which punctuation mark fits best there? Kind of have another odd situation here. Pretty rare that you would put 2 semicolons in the same paragraph, but I gotta admit, these are both complete thoughts. Subject, verb, complete thought, subject, verb, complete thought. They're both sentences. And I believe these sentences are closely related, so I would use a semicolon to separate them. However, if you put a period, as long as you capitalize this F over here, I wouldn't count you off for that, certainly as your teacher. But definitely these are sentences, so we need something stronger than just a comma, say. Number 3, if I close my eyes, I can still see those Friday night cheerleaders in orange and white shouting, "Go, fight, win." Grandparents shaking milk cartons full of pennies for noise. Miss Johnston and the student council selling hot dogs at the snack bar for the senior trip fundraiser. Little kids playing their own game of football in a side field. All right, which main player goes here? So what I see happening is, I think the second half is a list. It's a list of things that this writer can see when they close their eyes. Well, which of the 5 main players works best with the list? That's right, a colon. I think that's the best choice there. Number 4, everyone was there for one reason: to watch the next generation of Panthers carry on the tradition. Okay, this one's a little bit strange too. I would say, I think the colon works best here because I think effectively what this is here is a list. It's a list of one reason. The one reason everyone was there, to watch the next generation of Panthers carry on the tradition. But I have to admit, if I were your teacher, I wouldn't mark you down if you put a comma, because clearly this is in the middle of the sentence, and commas are used to say, hey, pause a sec, but I'm not done. I also wouldn't mark you down if you put a dash, because I do think dashes can be used to add extra information to a sentence, and I think that's what's going on here. But like I said, I think the best choice, because it's really acting as sort of a list of one thing, I think the best choice is, again, the colon. Number 5, whenever I feel the chilly fall air, I think about those football days and smile. It's kind of funny that I saved what I think is the easiest one for last. Well, clearly you can't put a period because that's not the end of the thought. And if you can't put a period, you can't put a semicolon because those are both used to separate sentences. And we already know this first part is not a sentence. It's not a complete thought. So what are the candidates we have left? Well, we could either put a colon, a comma, or a dash. I think you just simply have a comma situation. And you do. This is actually what's called a subordinate clause. And when you open a sentence with a subordinate clause, you generally put a comma after it to say, hey, pause a sec, and then I'm going to finish out the thought here. So do you see how this works? This is how the 5 main players work. You figure out where there's a pause, and then you just go through the list in your head. Okay, is this a period pause? Is this a comma pause? Is this a colon pause? Is this a dash pause? Or is this a semicolon pause? That's how the players work. And I hope this little video has helped you kind of get started on figuring out where there's a pause, so you know there's a cause, and then thinking through what type of pause it should be.